BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Phil Goodlad and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. It's Wednesday the 6th of November, and if you're looking to escape the US election results coverage, stick with us, because today we're mainly talking about this.
Johnston gets to the byline, into the bump, not dealt with. Arsene! It's Hatate! A grateful gift, gleefully taken by the Japanese midfielder!
We'll reflect on a special night in the East End of Glasgow and ask what it means for Celtic's European ambitions. We'll hear from manager Brendan Rodgers.
It wasn't just the result, but the performance. I think we played the game with a great charisma and confidence. We've had some really good results, but that definitely would be the best one.
And
Taylor across goal. Goal! Nicholas Kuhn again!
after what's been described as a sensational display, how important is Nicholas Kuhn now to the Scottish champions?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Great to have you along this morning. I'm joined by Kelty Hearts former Celtic midfielder Scott Allan and the man who can't wipe the smile off his face, although there'll be a few thousand people who are like that this morning that were at Parkhead last night. It's the host of the Celtic State of Mind podcast, Paul John Dykes. Gentlemen, morning to you both.
Morning, Phil.
Good morning, Phil. Thanks for having us on.
Well, thank you for coming along, although quite honestly, I would have imagined you just bounced your way into the podcast world this morning. I mean, let's sum this up, Paul John Dykes. As somebody who has watched Celtic in good times and in bad for the best part of 3-4 decades, how special was last night?
It's up there. I was thinking after the game just how highly I would regard the result. And I think it's probably Brendan Rodgers' best European result whilst at Celtic on both occasions. Obviously, we had the Seville run, which was incredible and really memorable. Some good runs under Gordon Strachan and brilliant results under Neil Lennon. But last night, I think we were up against a real quality side and we outplayed them. It wasn't backs to the wall, 11% possession. We absolutely outplayed them last night and it was a tremendous performance.
Scott Allan, Brendan Rodgers says that as far as European nights go for Celtic, that was his best. You wouldn't argue against him?
I don't think you could. I think it's everything that Brendan Rodgers has been working towards since he came back to Celtic. There was so many pleasing aspects of the performance. Obviously the character shown, got a goal down, 2-1 up at the break, and then the performance in the second half. Listen, you know, in football, when with that one goal lead, especially against real quality opponents, it can be difficult in the second half. But Celtic went out, totally controlled it, managed to get the third goal, and they've seen the game out so comfortably. I think that'll be the real pleasing thing for Brendan Rodgers. And the fact is, the Dortmund game, the draw with Aberdeen at home, Celtic are learning quickly, and that'll be something that really pleases Brendan Rodgers.
There's a number of things that I want to get into this morning specifically. By the way, I should say, if you're waiting for a news roundup from the world of Scottish football, this is the news this morning. So I make no apologies about ripping around all the other stories floating around, because this is quite a big morning. As you say, Paul John, Celtic controlled the game last night, and even when they went 1-0 down, it wasn't a case of trying to throw the kitchen sink at the Germans and then get caught out. It was almost like there was a maturity to the performance that we've been waiting to see for not just Brendan Rodgers' second term as manager, but almost for a few years now with Celtic.
Yeah, I think there's a stat out there. When the goal went in, you're looking at this stat, which was if Celtic concede first in 27 out of 28 games in the Champions League, we'll lose the game. And you're looking at how we're going to respond to that last night. And then the Dortmund game, we were criticised heavily after that. You're thinking we capitulated, will it happen again? And for about 13, 14 minutes, you know, Leipzig had us on the back foot, and we really did come through that, showed some great strength of character. And after that, we started to control the game. So we are learning. And like you say there, we're turning Celtic Park back into a fortress. 3 games on the bounce. If we can win the next 2 games in the Champions League at Celtic Park, then we can start dreaming, because it looks as though at that point we will progress.
Now, listen, let's take this dream on and let's just pretend for a moment that we're not talking about a Scottish team, that this could be any team in Europe. Having seen what you've seen, having seen the opposition that's coming ahead, what do you think Celtic playing like that last night can do in the Champions League?
Well, at the very beginning, you were looking to try and finish in that middle section, and people were saying that it's going to take 10 points. We've already got 7. If we can perform like that at home, maybe nick one result out of the last 2 games away from home, then not only are you looking for a playoff place, you're looking to be seeded. And then anything is possible at that stage. Momentum is massive. Momentum is a huge thing in football, as Scott will know better than us. And that's exactly what we're building up at the moment, Phil.
I'm smiling, Scott, Allan, because here we are now plotting a top 8 spot for the Scottish champions, whereas it doesn't seem that long ago that it was the morning after the 7-1 defeat in Dortmund.
Yeah, but like you touched on, it's Brendan Rodgers said they will learn from it. They go away to Atalanta, they put in a different type of performance. They were still brave though on the ball. There was tweaks to how Celtic obviously pressed Atalanta, but they came away with a valuable point. Then you take your home game, RB Leipzig, and listen, last night was immense. Like, you go through so many players, Nicholas Kuhn, Callum McGregor, but the biggest thing for me is how quick they're learning from the setbacks throughout the season, and that is, we've seen it on the weekend when they played Aberdeen, and last night, just to continue that sort of form. And the sort of football, it's bums off seat football, as I would call it. The Celtic fans must be waking up and looking forward to every fixture at this moment in time.
Let's speak about Nicholas Kuhn, and let's speak about how many times we have to keep watching that opening goal for not to think that he's going to miss it. Because I have watched that this morning, I would say probably a dozen times, and every time I'm thinking, well, this can't be the goal because it's going to go past the post. And then it's like a big gust of wind just blows it in at the last minute. It was a sensational strike.
Out to the right-hand side, lovely touch from Engels for Kuhn. Kuhn into the penalty area he goes. Going to get his shot away. Curls one! Goal! What a goal from Nicholas Kuhn, who takes the acclaim from the home fans. An absolutely outrageous chip from Nicholas Kuhn, curling it beyond.
I was thinking, Scott, that a big part of that was Engels makes a run, and he creates that wee bit of space, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's what I had that written down in my notes about how important the Engels run is. He shows a bit of quality, the wee round the corner pass into Kuhn, and then for most players, they just watch that, they go, right, I'll leave Nicholas Kuhn to go and show a bit of positivity, a bit of directness, but because he makes a run with such pace, I think it's a covering centre back, he doesn't get dragged out of Kuhn. He's obviously more aware of Engels making the run, and that just creates that little bit of space, and then he finish it in the way he does and get you back into the game. But that, it shows you the importance of Celtic passing forward, running forward, what Brendan Rodgers wants from this dynamic team, and all the players fit that profile. Because I think physically Celtic looked far superior to Leipzig last night, which was one of the most interesting things for me, especially over recent years. That would be the thing you would maybe say Celtic didn't have, especially over a German side. So you can't underestimate the importance of the unselfish run from Engels, but to finish in the form that Kuhn is in at the moment, sensational.
Yeah, 19 goal contributions, which seems to be a new term now in football. It's either goals or assists. He's done 19 in 16 games. Paul John, can we be honest now? Take me into the heart of the Celtic support. Because Nicholas Kuhn wasn't somebody, I got the impression, that you particularly, I'm not going to say disliked, but you maybe didn't trust on the big nights when he first came to Celtic. That must have changed now.
I think that's fair to say. You know, in the January transfer window, we were looking at Ida. He was the main man last season, wasn't he, at the end of the campaign? And we later found out that there was some issues with fitness due to the dental problems that Nicholas Kuhn had. But many of us were looking at Nicholas Kuhn and thinking he's another £3 million player that hasn't worked out. And he's come back fighting this season. He looks a lot stronger, playing with an incredible confidence. And he had a point to prove against Borussia Dortmund. He spoke about his aspirations for playing in the German national team again. And we were terrible that night. But last night, it was a completely different story. I think he scored or assisted a goal every 54 minutes this season in a Celtic jersey. And that's just sensational.
I think for me, in terms of Kuhn, when he first came in, he's maybe a victim of the success of other players who've come in and hit the ground running. Your Kyogos, Maeda, go back to Jota. I think sometimes, obviously, in this city, you can be really impatient with players because they don't go off to a flyer, but a bit of patience, comes back, has a good pre-season, and like you said, the goal contributions, that is really incredible stuff from Nicholas Kuhn.
When you've played at Celtic and other teams and you have a player who who finds form the way that Nicholas Kuhn has, and I know it's an overused statement in football and in sport in generally, but does it feel like it's a new player that you're playing alongside when they've hit the ground running and when they're starting to display the form that you expected perhaps from a teammate when he came in but maybe didn't show, and that gives you a boost when he does?
Well, it definitely does when he's contributing with the goals and assists that he has in the big games.
You know what I mean? Is there almost sometimes a disappointment when a club signs a player and you think, well, this is going to be a player, and then he maybe doesn't achieve in the first 6 months what you thought he would. So that makes it even more surprising, isn't the right words, but almost more beneficial when that player does become the one that you thought he would.
It's a good question. I think what you look for in a player when someone comes and you've high hopes of them, as you speak about, you see flashes in training and you go, once this all kind of clicks together, we could have a serious player here. I think that's maybe how this has went for Celtic. Nicholas Kuhn's came in at a bit of up and down form, but as a teammate, he would maybe do something in training. You go, there's a player in there, we've just not quite seen it yet. Not to say that isn't an easy feat though, going to a team obviously with the pressures that has playing for them like Celtic do. And I think early on, if you maybe give a pass away at Celtic Park, the fans start to groan. And you're replacing guys like Jota and that, who are fans' favourites. That's not an easy thing. He's not as if he's a hugely experienced player, Nicholas Kuhn, when he's came to Celtic. But Brendan Rodgers has been patient, he's worked with him, and now the teammates, the fans and the manager are now getting the rewards of that patience that they've shown in him.
Paul John, will you do the nation a favour and start some sort of petition to try and get Callum McGregor back in a Scotland shirt? Because that Callum McGregor we saw last night has to play for Scotland again. Please make it happen.
He was outstanding, wasn't he? He orchestrated the game. And again, after Dortmund, there was a whole list of heavy Celtic defeats in Europe. You know, Barcelona, PSG, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, and Dortmund itself. And McGregor had played in all those games, and a lot of people were actually questioning whether or not this was his level. And he's gone out last night and shown that it absolutely is. He was outstanding. And some of the lung-bursting runs, turning defence into attack, were incredible from Callum McGregor. Selfishly, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, is it because he's got a wee bit more in the tank? He's decided to retire from international football. But he's had a great season, isn't he? And he's getting in amongst the goals as well. And he's a real leader. Going back to a point Scott made as well about the physicality, you look at some of the players we brought in this season, Schmeichel, Trusty, Engels and Ida. Oh no, he didn't start last night. And I think they have been brought in with this kind of game in mind, and they really do step up. It's a different test in Europe, not just in terms of the technique, but in that physical sense. But it looks as though we've got it now.
As far as Callum McGregor is concerned, Pat Nevin on Sportsound last night made a really interesting point where it was midway through the first half and Callum McGregor took the ball and made a couple of 1-2s rather than, when they were chasing for an equaliser, just go straight up the park and try and make it happen. And Pat Nevin said at that moment there was almost a sense both in the Celtic team but also in the Leipzig team that Celtic were not going to throw the kitchen sink at this, but that there was a maturity to their play, and that it almost, Pat Nevin said, sort of sucked the lifeblood out of Leipzig when they saw that they weren't going to be able to hit Celtic on the break maybe as much as they thought they might do against the home side that's chasing an equaliser. And McGregor just slowed things down, made sure of the passes, made a couple of 1-2s, kept possession, and then tried to get that equaliser.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, watching Cal and obviously the kind of moment in the game where Pat Nevin touches on, that's just all the experience of, and that's between Callum and Brendan. They would have watched lots of videos on this Leipzig team and how they try and affect you when probably their best chance of scoring was you're in possession of the ball. So Cal, that's just the maturity. They wee bounce passes sucks obviously Leipzig players out who think they can nick the ball on you and then counter you, but Celtic, nice and quick, out the other side, a bit of patience, and with all that movement in front of you, especially for Callum McGregor, it must be a dream for him as well, because you've got players all over the pitch demanding the ball, and that's the outcome of that with a 3-1 result.
The other point, and you'll know this very well, that Pat Nevin made last night was that Callum McGregor did what 50 to 60,000 Celtic fans tried for him not to do, which was He ignored the home fans saying, put the ball forward, trying it, and he made the decision on his own experience, do you know what, I'm going to play a couple of 1-2s and just keep possession.
Yeah, but I think, but that's why he's captain of Celtic. That is, you got to make that. You got to be headstrong. Cal's obviously had a lot of experience, especially playing against some real good sides. And if you don't take the experiences from previous games where you give the ball away because you're so gung ho trying to get back into the game and you've been countered, that's what I was touched on in terms of the team learning from Dortmund. That's a sign of a team. And a guy in his 30s with all that experience still learning from previous results, taking into the next game, and the end product of that is a fully measured performance from Cal McGregor and his Celtic teammates.
Paul John, do you think that the Celtic supporters have now, and I'm not going to demean you by saying that you've learned your lesson, but that you have now matured as a support when it comes to Celtic in Europe, that you're not looking for the quick ball up front to chase onto, but you're actually happy when you see a Callum McGregor just slow things down and try and build from the back?
Going back to what you were saying about the maturity of the performance, I think as a supporter you get used to that and you start to trust. You trust the gaffer first and foremost, and you trust guys like Callum McGregor who are going to carry it through on the park as well. So a European night, you get carried away, it's under the lights, the atmosphere's electric, and you do sometimes want that gung-ho approach and you're urging the team on. But at the same time, you know, as well as being patient, I think that we were able to transition really quickly and get them on the back foot enough to keep us on the edge of our seats. But yeah, I think the maturity of the team is rubbing off on the fans as well, Phil, for sure. And at home, if we can make it a fortress, then, as I say, anything is possible now. And that's incredible because, you know, even under Ange Postecoglou in his final season, it very much was gung-ho. It was the opposite of what you're talking about, and it was just attack, attack, attack. But there's far more pragmatism to the approach that Rodgers has deployed here. Long may that continue.
We're speaking about Brendan Rodgers. Let's hear what the Celtic manager had to say after last night's performance.
I felt tonight we had that combination of the Bratislava vibrancy and excitement in our attack, and then the real tactical discipline in our defending. And I think we pulled those two together to produce an outstanding team performance against a really, really, really good side who've only conceded 5 goals all season. So for us to have had 3 and have other opportunities to score was I tip my hat to the players. It wasn't just the result, but the performance. I think we played the game with a great charisma and confidence and how we want to play, and show the courage in our pressing. They've only conceded 5 goals all season, so to play to that level then against that, then most definitely we've had some really good results, but that definitely would be the best one. There's been obviously a lot of criticism around the club at this level, but we want to be really competitive, make it really difficult for teams, both home and away, and just step by step become that. So, and we can't look any further than that. It's a great performance. It was a great night for the football club, and we'll take that energy into our next games.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Just finally, Scott and Paul John, what next? Club Brugge up next for Celtic. They play Aston Villa tonight. Did the performance that you saw last night, Scott, Allan, actually, it doesn't matter who Celtic play next, because if they take that performance into the next game, then they only need to look after what they can do. They don't need to be worried about the opponents.
Well, I think first and foremost for me, the performance last night, that's not an accident, it's not a one-off for me, and I think that will be the most pleasing thing for Celtic fans. They are well more than capable of this sort of performance week in, week out, which we have seen in terms of domestically. Now, obviously, Club Brugge, and there's no easy games in Europe. If you take the eye off the ball, you can be punished, but the confidence the group will take from that, and like I said, that is not a one-off performance. For me, this Celtic team's grown all the time, and I think there's still more to come.
Paul John, just finally, because I'm going to get a lot of grief for this being just what many people will say is a Celtic loving podcast episode, a happiness in the garden of Scottish football, and they'll be, Phil, I can't believe you're a Celtic man and you're waxing on about that. Was there anything last night that you saw from your team that they need to improve on? Anything that you were almost disappointed with?
That is a difficult one after such a memorable result. I'm pretty sure we'll look back on it and analyse it, as will Brendan Rodgers. And he speaks about, have a tidiness with the ball, you're not losing possession. And I think some of the players we've got who are game changers can sometimes lose possession because they're being risky with the pass. But even Rio Atati last night, some of his passing was unbelievable. There was one moment where he cuts right through the defence with one of these passes, and that's what they bring to the occasion. No, I've got to say, from last night's performance, there wasn't anything glaring. There was certainly plenty from the Dortmund performance, and it looks as though we've implemented that. But you know what? There's nothing wrong with having 11 after last night. I think the boys deserve it, Phil. And we're always quick to criticise, aren't we? So when we've done well, let's enjoy it.
We are. And let me point out, because I'm a voice piece for the BBC, if Rangers and Hearts have similar glittering performances this week, we will have a love-in for them the following day on the podcast. We're going to leave it there. Scott Allan, former Celtic player, thank you for joining us. Paul John Dykes from a Celtic State of Mind podcast, thank you for your thoughts this morning as well. Plenty more on all things Champions League here on the BBC, the iPlayer and website. 10:40 tonight on BBC One Scotland as well. Champions League highlights. And of course, we'll be here bright and early every day with the Scottish Football Podcast. So to be alerted when new episodes are out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. For now, though, I'm Phil Goodlad. We'll speak again soon, and enjoy the beautiful day ahead, because everything is rosy in the garden, it seems, Scottish football.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swabu, and I used to be a professional footballer, but then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me?
This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangers Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.